Sí se puede. Yes, we can. Even President Obama used these words in his campaign for president. Sí se puede. If you know those three words, you already know something about today's incredible guest, the one and only Dolores Huerta. Welcome, Dolores. Such an honor to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You have spent over 8 decades of your life helping the community, advocating for justice, grassroots organizing. You've been a pillar for all of us in our communities across California and the country, being a leader, a teacher, a trailblazer. And we're just honored that we have you here in the community, leading us all, guiding us. You've received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, highest civilian honor this country gives. And through it all, you never stop. You stay humble. You teach us not just about leadership, but about character. Through the Dolores Huerta Foundation, you built leaders, organizers. You're teaching the next generation that the work of justice is never really finished. It's just handed forward. Wow. This is not just a career. This is a life's work. Please, audience, help me welcome a legend of the movimiento, a mother of the Chicano civil rights movement, a teacher, a trailblazer, and a woman who's taught millions of us that sí se puede. Yes, we can. It was never just a slogan. It was an instruction for all of us, a life instruction, a life work. Dolores, bienvenida. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So I'm going to start with question number one. Will you describe what your life was like growing up in the California Central Valley and how that shaped your vision for the work you do today? What have been your proudest accomplishments from co-founding the UFW to the movements, many more movements you've helped to sustain that embody the legacy you like to pass on to the next generation?
Well, although I grew up in the Central Valley in Stockton, California, but I actually was born in New Mexico. And so a lot of the values that I hold and that I practice come from growing up in New Mexico. My mother was a great devotee of St. Francis Xavier, who was a devotee of St. Francis of Assisi. And St. Francis's teachings about helping others and serving other people, those were the instructions that our mother raised us with, you know. And she always said, if you see someone that needs help, you should help them, even if they don't ask you. Even if they don't ask you, if you can be of service to others, you have to do that. And the other thing she said, don't ever expect or accept any kind of compensation. Because if you do that, you take away the grace of the act that you did to help someone else. And so that's something that myself and my brothers, that's the way that she raised us, is that we have to be of service to others.
That's beautiful.
And then I was a Girl Scout for 10 years of my life, from the time I was 8 years old till the time I was 18. And I think that kind of reinforced those values. And then, of course, my mother was a very charitable person. She was an entrepreneur. She was a businesswoman, but she always believed in helping the community. You know, she was very charitable. She helped form the first Mexican-American Chamber of Commerce in Stockton, California, as a businesswoman. But she was very active in the community. When we formed the Community Service Organization, and she always had to get she registered the most voters. You know, she signed up the most members. She was a very competitive, but in a very quiet way. She was a quiet woman, but she did a lot of stuff.
So you already came from a strong woman role model, your mother.
Yeah.
And then that taught you a lot. What's the first experience that you remember as a little girl helping someone?
Well, see, in the Girl Scouts, we would do that all the time. We would go to different nursing homes or hospitals, and we would make things for people. That was part of the growing up in the Girl Scouts, that you always had different projects that you did to help people out, you know.
So you go through the Girl Scouts. You're helping people out, and you enter your teenage years. You enter high school. Were you still doing Girl Scout leadership?
I was a Girl Scout till I was 18 years old.
Wow.
And in the meantime, I participated. I was a majorette, and I participated in the local Latino activities that we had. La Comisión Honorífica, where we did the Fiestas Patrias, el Cinco de Mayo, the 16th of September. Yeah, so I was always very active. Then I belonged to several of the local social clubs, like we had Azuli Oro Club. I don't know what it was, a blue and gold, Azuli, where we would have dances. And then the money that we would raise from the dances, we would use that at Christmas time or Thanksgiving to give out Christmas baskets for people, you know. But the one thing about belonging to all these, I was also active in my church club, the Santa Teresitas, and I belonged to the choir in 2 different churches. I was very, very active. But the one thing I realized that in all of these organizations that I belonged to, nothing ever changed. You know, we still had the racism in our high school. There was a lot of racism against the Latinos and African Americans and the Filipinos, and that always made me really angry. You know, to see the racism.
Well, so you were in high school. There was the racism against these people of color groups. What's one of those experiences that you saw in high school?
Well, not only the way there was like a push out, you know what I mean? A lot of the kids that went to my high school, you know, little by little they were pushed out of school. So the way that they were treated, and I even suffered some racism personally. Again, because I was a Girl Scout, they had an essay contest, and the first prize was to go to Switzerland. And the second prize was to go to spend 2 weeks in a Navajo reservation in New Mexico. And I was really excited because I won the second prize. It was a national contest of the Girl Scouts. But in order to go there, I had to leave school 2 weeks early. Yeah, but I knew a lot of my friends were getting off 2 weeks early to go on vacation with their parents, okay? So I went to all my teachers because I was a good student. I got permission from all my teachers that I could leave school 2 weeks early, and they would give me some homework to do in advance. But then the dean of girls, who was a real racist, would not let me go.
Wow.
And my mother went there with me, and we pleaded with her, and she was just adamant. No, if I go to that Girl Scout camp of the Navajo Reservation, that I would not be able to graduate. So she forbid me to go. Now later on, by the way, that dean was fired. Several years later, I found out, again, because of her racism.
Wow. So she was preventing you
Yeah.
specifically because she didn't want you to
Yeah.
enjoy that privilege that you had earned.
And like I said, I knew other fellow students that got permission to leave school 2 weeks early to go on vacation with their parents, you know?
So those early experiences with injustice, you know, especially in a time when, you know, you were proud of who you were and you were serving your community, but during that time, that was not the cool thing to do. During that time, you know, a lot of people were hiding their culture and who they were, their identity. But meanwhile, you were showcasing it and showing that it's through our culture and our identity that we could have most impact in the community.
Well, you know, we were always proud of our heritage. My grandfather, whose mother was from Spain, and his father was from Spain, pero he always siempre decía que era mexicano. He always said he was a Mexican. He was, you know, born in New Mexico, and he always insisted that we speak Spanish. He said el inglés es la idioma de los mentirosos.
De los
Mentirosos.
mentirosos.
Yeah, he said English is the language of liars. He said,
why do you think he would say that?
Because he said well, he grew up in the Southwest during the time of Billy the Kid, you know, and all of And he said, if you called a man a liar, he could shoot you. He could kill you because the only thing you have is your word. And if you break your word, if you lie, that, actually, so that was a very, very precious thing that you had. But he said that in the English language, because they lie, that unless it's written on paper, unless it's written on paper, and people have to swear by what they write down, it doesn't have any value.
Yeah,
Tiene valor.
yeah, no tiene valor because that population not too long before his time had just experienced annexation, the stealing of lands.
He grew up during all that turbulent time,
Ah, the alum, all of that, where lands are just getting stolen from indigenous and
Right.
and Mexican origin people.
Right.
And so he understood that people would show up and with the English language lie and steal some of the land. That was powerful. So you were proud of who you were early on. You felt that you could use that to help others. You saw the injustice. You graduate high school. Where do you go from there?
Well, I worked like a lot of people did. I got different jobs, you know, and one of the jobs that I had actually, but that was later on in life. But what changed my life in terms of my being an organizer is when I was in school at college. One of my college teachers invited me to a meeting, and there was a man there named Fred Ross Sr. And I don't know if you have his documentary. They just did a documentary about him called American Agitators.
Yes.
Yeah. But I met Fred Ross, and I went to this meeting. It was again my fellow teacher invited me to this meeting, and there was just three of us there. One of my friends was a probation officer. The other one was a teacher, and so Mr. Ross had just had been organizing in Los Angeles. That they had actually gotten the first Latino elected to the city council of Los Angeles, Eduardo Roybal. And then he became also the first Latino to the Congress of the United States of America. So in that meeting, Mr. Ross explained to us how they had done the organizing, and he showed us press clippings. Shows a press clipping of 100 people in a meeting. I thought, whoa, I've never seen more than 20 people in a meeting. And here you have 100 people. And then he showed us a press clippings about clinics and how they had brought in street lights and sidewalks and sewers into East Los Angeles, into the Boyle Heights area. And then he showed us a clipping, the one that really, I might say, that hooked me, que me enganchó, was he showed us a clipping of how they had sent these policemen to prison for beating up Mexican-American youth. And I thought, oh my God, any organization that can send police to prison for beating up Mexican youth, I want to belong to that organization. And so that changed my entire life. So eventually, I volunteered. We formed a chapter of that organization called the Community Service Organization, CSO. And I became a full-time volunteer for that organization. So the first thing we did is we started going door to door to register voters. And so I started registering voters. And then when we formed a chapter of the group, I became the secretary of the organization. And so that organization and Mr. Ross really changed my life.
That's beautiful. How old do you remember the age? How old were you?
25.
25. So right now, right, we have a lot of young people in their 20s, in college, just graduating college, trying to figure out their life. A lot of my UC Santa Barbara students, other students I mentor all over the country, they're reaching out and saying, hey, Dr. Rios, how do I figure out my life while helping the community? They want to do both. Or they want to be able to make a little bit of an income and support their family because they come from working class families, whether they're from the Central Valley, from Fresno, whether they're from South LA, Watts, whether they're from Compton or Oakland or San Francisco. They're coming from working class communities that now are being gentrified, now are under attack. places like Inglewood, where it used to, be very affordable, and the community's thriving, and all of a sudden a stadium gets built and the people are being kicked out. And so they're trying to do both. They're trying to make money to help their family, and then they're also trying to help the community. What advice would you have for a 20-something year old that's trying to figure out those two worlds?
Well, I know it's going to be really hard for young people right now because there aren't as many jobs available as there used to be for people. But I think number one is like you shouldn't be particular or fussy about what kind of a job that you might get, because I think even the most menial job that you have, you know, I know like yourself, one of my sons who became a doctor, his job was to clean the bathrooms at one of the Lucky stores while he was going to college. Uh, and in my own life, I've done different kinds of jobs. Working in a candy shop, you know, it's any job that you could. Working as a shoe sales lady in a shoe store, you know, just yeah. So you shouldn't be particular about what kind of a job you have. Any kind of a job that you can get, but again, trying to find some time in your life to continue to do volunteer work in the community, because when you do the volunteer work in the community, then that's where you can meet people that will offer you opportunities. So it's not always about the money as much as it is about what kind of contribution you can make, but also what doors can be open for you.
Yes. I mean, your generation, you're a trailblazer, and you've taught us, our generations, and younger generations, that you shouldn't allow people to exploit you for your labor, right? And if someone's exploiting you, getting rich off your back and setting up bad conditions for you, then you need to stand up.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that because we have a tendency to really admire people who have an academic achievements, we also have to remember that many of our fathers or grandfathers, that they didn't have those opportunities. So they worked out in the fields, they worked in the packing sheds, and these are very, very honorable jobs. When people work out there in the farms, they're feeding the nation, they're feeding the families. So people should never ever be ashamed to say, I worked in the fields. My parents worked in the fields. My parents worked in the packing sheds, or they worked in the cannery, whatever, food processing, whatever it may be. It's all honorable work. And I think often we have a tendency in the United States of America to really revere people that are academics, but we don't revere people enough to really do the hard work. The people that work in construction, the people that work in the hotels, the people who do really, really hard work, people that are out there cleaning the streets. So I think we have to kind of reverse that kind of mentality that we have. No, the people that work with their hands need to be respected and revered as much as the people that go to college.
Yes, those are the true essential workers, because without them, our society would fall apart. We wouldn't have food, we wouldn't have infrastructure, and so that's so important. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I feel like, you know, we forget where we come from. And I always tell, my students and teachers that I work with, I ask them, how many of you grew up working class? And a lot of them raise their hand. And then I'll ask them, I'll say, well, do me a favor, can you please not forget where you come from? Because sometimes we get judgmental. We say, well, I came from that place and look at me now. I'm doing better. They can do better too. But if we don't give people a helping hand, how are they going to do better? And that's what you've been good at. Wherever you go, you find a way to provide opportunity to people, whether it's better working conditions, but whether it's standing up for women that, are not doing well, or being exploited for their labor, whether it's helping young people that are learning how to organize, and you bring in these incredible experiences of organizing.
Yeah, I used to have a joke that I used to tell my son, Emilio, who's an attorney. Doesn't like my joke, but I would say, if you had to be on a deserted island and you could only take one person with you, who would you take, an attorney or a farm worker?
Wow.
The answer is obvious, right?
Yes, that's a beautiful way to put it. As you moved along, right, in your years of impact, you you found incredible ways. I mean, I followed you, watched videos, read newspapers, see clips on social media about you. You found a way to inspire people through real short, pithy phrases. And I wonder, where does that inspiration come from? Where do you kind of pick up these ideas of, I'm going to, in the moment right now, I'm going to say, si se puede.
Well, I have to say that it's as you just said, in the moment. I mean, the way that Si Se Puede came about is we were doing a campaign in Arizona. Cesar was doing a 25 water only fast. And he had been fasting because they had passed a bill in Arizona that if farm workers went on strike, they could go to jail. If anybody said boycott anything, they could go to jail. And so we were trying to get the governor to overturn that or to veto that bill. Of course, he signed it, and it was eventually overturned in the state Supreme Court of Arizona. But trying to get people to join the struggle and to help us fight that legislation. And in speaking to some of our Latino leaders there in Arizona, trying to get them to help us. And their response, I made a presentation to them. Their response was, no, aquí en Arizona, no se puede. Here in Arizona, you can't do any of that. In California, you people can do all of those things. But here in Arizona, no, we can't do that. Aquí no se puede. No se puede. And my response to them was, sí se puede. Sí se puede in Arizona. And they kind of became our battle cry there in Arizona. That yes, we could change this in Arizona also. Yeah. So it was very spontaneous response to their no se puede, right? And then when I went back to report that, because we had a rally every night, in a mass and a rally. And when I reported to the group, my response to them, si se puede, everybody jumped up and started clapping. Si se puede, si se puede. So so the origin is very organic.
It is, but I would argue that it's organic to where you come from and your life experience, because if it wasn't your mom showing you the strength of what a powerful woman can do, if it wasn't for the Girl Scout leadership, if it wasn't for, these experiences you had, that you kind of knew in a time where they had a lot of boundaries around women, you knew in your corazon that no one was going to put a boundary on you. And that's why you were able to assert que sí se puede, even when people out there were saying no se puede, no, we can't do it. We live in a society with patriarchy where men get the credit. Men, still to this day, right? Most of Congress is men. We still haven't had a woman president in this country. The Fortune 500 CEOs, 98% of them are men. There's a stat also, according to the Center for American Women in Politics at Rutgers University, women currently only hold about 29% of seats in the U.S. Congress. When you began, it was even less than that. What do you think it takes to continue to break that patriarchy that can be very devastating to our societies?
Well, and the only reason is that's the fact that we have more women in government now as governors, as senators. In the state of California, our Senate right now, I think we have a majority of women. And of course, we got Monique Limon,
Yes.
who's the president of the Senate.
I love Monique Limon, yes.
So, and the only reason that we have that is because the women's movement has pushed that. We started, I'm also a board member of the Feminist Majority Foundation, and we started a movement called to give gender balance in all walks of life, but especially in the legislatures. And we actually did a big campaign to get more women elected. In the first campaign that we did, we were able to change the California legislature we got 30% of the legislature became women.
Wow.
And we got some of the first Latinas elected. You know, as you know, we had Hilda Solis, who became the first Latina senator in California, and then of course she became the first Latina to be on the on the national on the national board with Obama when he was president, and she was the Secretary of Labor.
Yeah.
So, but it took. We got the first Latina elected to the Congress, Lucille Roybal Allard, and the first Puerto Rican, Nidia Velasquez from New York City, a Puerto Rican, elected to the Congress. But that's the work that needs to be done.
Yes.
There's people power. And when you, going back to your question about what Si Se Puede means, and this is, of course, what I learned from Fred Ross in those first meetings that we had when I got hooked to become an organizer, is that people have the power to make these things happen.
Yes.
People have the power to make it happen. And that to me was like a revelation.
Yeah.
That you can do all of these things, like I mentioned, the big meetings, bringing the infrastructure needs that you need into your community, that you can make this happen. And when you think about it, it's what democracy is all about. Because democracy is about people having self-governance.
Mm.
But in order to get there, number one, you've got to get people organized. You got to get people to vote. Like I said, the first thing I did after we started our chapter was go out there and register voters.
Yes.
So we can just put that into people's minds and into their lives, the way that we make things happen in a democracy like the one that we have under our Constitution. People have to make it work.
Yes.
And then anything is possible. Anything is
That's
possible.
beautiful. That reminds me, growing up in Oakland, California myself, single mother. I didn't really have, dire poverty, no guidance. So I dropped out of high school. I was one of the push-outs you mentioned and ended up in and out of juvie and got in a lot of trouble, dropped out. But I remember you talk about self-governance. I remember on the streets, we used to have self-governance. We just use it in a bad way. Me and my homies, me and the guys I grew up with, and sometimes it's young people that are out there, kind of that has been disenfranchised. That are the best organizers because they've already developed self-governance, even though it might not be in a positive way sometimes. And one of my mentors, Elizabeth Batista Martinez, she was actually organizing in the community. And she was writing a book. At the time, it was 500 years of Chicano history. And I think there was a version of it before that. It was a different title. But she would bring us from the streets to give her feedback on her book. And so I guess my point is that it's everyday people that organize themselves in a positive way that end up making change in this world. And that's what you've been incredible at, just organizing everyday people that are living everyday struggles. But I guess the question is, how do you help people that are already overworked, oppressed, but in your heart that they have the potential to become leaders?
Well, everybody has the potential. This is the way I put it, because I have a lot of children. And I kept on working in the movement, even with all of my kids. I always like to say this: everybody has personal problems. Everybody has personal problems. You have problems at work, you have problems with school, you have problems with your family. But a lot of those problems take care of themselves, okay? So if you don't focus on your personal problems and you focus more on getting things done, getting people organized, bringing people together, making real changes in the political world. Those are changes that really they actually affect a lot of people.
Yeah.
These are real powerful changes that happen. Then these other problems with your family, at work, at school, they're going to go away eventually. They're going to settle themselves one way or the other. So you don't want to focus on those problems. Just try to stay focused on what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to change, what you're trying to make better.
Mm.
And that gives you a lot of purpose in life, I believe, because then you're focusing on things that you want to happen, all right? Things that are within your bailiwick that you can actually change.
Yeah. I feel like, growing up, I'd seen so much, a lot of violence, a lot of, you know, abuse. And then I got to college, teacher saved my life. She sends me off to college. It helped me graduate. And in college, I started organizing, joined Mecha, and mentored students in the local community. Even one of my former high school mentees used to tutor her, mentor her, and her friends. A group of us would. She ended up becoming a school board member in her community, and she was on the podcast recently. And she's saying, "Look, you guys mentored us and taught us." And so it's these generations mentoring new generations. I feel like that's what keeps meaning in your life and keeps almost a community healing going. When you're organizing, you're healing yourself and you're healing others. How have you been able to sort of create those circles of healing in different communities?
Well, I think when people work together,
Mhm.
and even if you don't always agree on everything, but the fact that you're working together and you've got a common cause that you're working on, I think, as I said before, it gives you purpose in life. It makes you see that what you've done actually improves life for everybody, or for certain people, depending on what project you're working on. But it's a very heady feeling, and I want to say it's different. I mentioned before, when I belong to these organizations where we raise money to give food baskets at Christmas. Okay, uh, and when you do charity work, it makes you feel good because you helped somebody, okay? But the feeling that is even better than that is when you can help people to help themselves. When you can grow the leadership in your community, and the people that before you had to help, you don't have to help them because they're helping themselves. They become the leaders. That is the biggest payoff at all.
Yes, the self-sufficiency.
Yeah, like in my foundation, we organize people at the grassroots level, the way that Fred Ross taught us how. And so people that they may not have a high school education or even an elementary school education, but they're intelligent. They're intelligent. They know how to do things, and when they come together and they're able to accomplish major changes, oh my God, it's something that you could not even describe the way that people feel. Because it makes them feel not only that they're important, that they're valuable, that they're leaders. It's a very great feeling.
Yes, and you could create sustainability because even when you're long gone in another community or somewhere else, they're still that's movimiento. They're still pushing change in a positive way.
Yeah, the changes still remain.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
good.
near Santa Barbara and Oxnard, you have a really good example of that with Cabrillo Village.
Yes.
Cabrillo Village was a labor camp for farm workers. They were going to bulldoze it down, but the people stood up. They stood in front of the bulldozers, okay? In front of the bulldozers. They did not let them bulldoze that place down. So they have their own communities. They run their own housing project. It's expanded. But that was a really good example. And these were all farm workers, that did this.
It's beautiful.
And like in our foundation, we've had some big battles. We sued our current high school district because they had expelled 2,100 Black and brown students.
Yeah,
2,100.
that's
And we sued them. And from those 2,100 expulsions, it is now less than 21 per year.
wow. That's a big change.
Yeah.
And so those changes, seeing the community, organize and make positive change, that's probably one of the biggest fulfillments you get in life. But I do want to ask you, because you're very humble, about the Presidential Medal of Honor.
Mhm.
You get the call. They say, "Hey, you're coming to the White House." It was under the Obama administration. We're going to award you. President Obama awarded you the Presidential Medal of Honor. You go back to like little Dolores, the little girl that's in Girl Scout. What would she think? Like that one day a president would be giving her the Presidential Medal of Honor.
Well, I think when you do the work, as you know, when you do the kind of work that we do, it's always about making life better for other people. It's never about what kind of honors you're going to get. You know, again, that's a secondary. You know,
Yes.
you might say it's an add-on, but that isn't your purpose. I was happy that I got. It's called a Medal of Freedom, by the way, because they gave it to me for being a good organizer.
Wow.
And you know, President Obama was an organizer before he became a senator and president. You know, and so I really enjoyed that I was recognized for my organizing work.
But did you always know, like you were a little girl, you're like, I know you weren't doing it for the medals, but did you always know, like, one day I'm going to be on one of the biggest stages in this country?
Oh no. You know, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a dancer.
A dancer?
My goal in life was to be a flamenco dancer.
Flamenco. Oh, you would have fit in well in Santa Barbara. They have the flamenco day, the Spanish day.
Yes, yeah. Growing up in New Mexico as a little kid, I
right.
saw the flamenco dancers, and I fell in love. And then one of my great grandmothers was from Spain, so I always loved flamenco.
And
But that was my goal in life, to be a dancer.
And you danced.
Pardon me?
You danced
Yeah, I did.
until what age?
Oh, I mean, not professionally.
Yeah.
You know, I took a lot of dancing lessons, you know, and I did love to dance. At 96, my legs are not quite what they used to be.
96 years old. You know, I didn't. You know, I knew, right, your age, but I didn't think of it your age. You know, seeing you and being with you, and you definitely, the spirit that you have just inspires us all in terms of, you know, the energy that you bring. But what is your, like, what, you got to have some secrets. What's your secret? Because see, a lot of times in organizing, as you know, I got a lot of friends from Oakland, from the Bay Area, from LA. They're organizers, and sometimes they're giving so much to the community that maybe they end up not taking care of their well-being as much because they don't have the time, the resources. They're giving everything to everyone. So how do you keep your well-being going while giving so much to others?
Well, I think I've been lucky, but I would say in terms of advice to younger people, yeah, take care of your health. That's really, really important. I probably could have done a better job of taking care of my health. But yeah, that's really important. Especially when you're young, you think you're never going to get old. Okay, eventually, you will get old, and so you have to start taking care of your health since they're very young. You know, especially making sure that we know in our community we have a tendency toward diabetes. You know, so we have to make sure that we start curtailing our sugar, et cetera, and you know, start getting some good habits, some good health habits from the time that you're very young. Oh, well, I'm a vegetarian now, and I have been a vegetarian for about the last 30 years.
30.
30 years. Just cutting back meat, you know.
Wow.
I think that helps.
That has helped you. Yeah. I mean, whatever strategies work for people in terms of their well-being, because sometimes, you know, I think it's very important for us to see us making change and helping heal ourselves and heal others as a holistic practice. So, you know, yes, you can go encourage someone. Yes, you can inspire someone. You can lend a helping hand. But how can you help others if you're not helping yourself?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then getting a lot of exercise. I think, you know I should get more than I should take more exercising than what I do. But I would very definitely say that's really important also. Yeah, because people have in this new world that we're living in, people will live longer, and so and when you want to live long, you want to be healthy because it's not a good look or enjoyable to say, yeah, I'm going to live a long time, but then I'm going to be sick all the time. You know, when you get older, so you can stay healthy and start getting some of those habits. You know.
Yeah.
And then I think education has a lot to do. You know, we really got to push education a lot because we have a lot of even in our own community, we still have these, I call it from colonization, the kind of hang-ups that we have, and it affects the way people vote and the way people think. We still have a lot of machismo, violence against women. We have a lot of racism still in our own society. When we have to look at our Latino families, and I like to say, when a baby is born, that people say, how qué bonita la niña porque está bien güerita. How pretty that baby is because it's light skinned. And we've got to change that mentality that comes from colonization and comes from slavery. We got to say, that baby's beautiful because it's dark. It's moreno, It's got the dark eyes, and it's got,
indigenous features.
Slendy eyes,
Yes.
ojos chinitos,
Yeah.
And we've got to celebrate our indigenous roots instead of our European roots more. I think that's really, really important. And then we have to get rid of all of the homophobia that exists in our community,
Yeah.
And I always like to quote Benito Juarez, what he says, that respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz, respecting other people's rights is peace. And that means if somebody falls in love with, lives with, or marries someone of their own sex, whose business is it?
Yeah.
Theirs, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't affect you, it doesn't affect your family. But we've got to have the courage, and I want to say this to all the young people out there, have the courage to bring up the conversation with your own family.
Wow.
Because mothers and fathers do listen to their kids. I say that as a parent, okay? When my kids tell me something, I listen. I may not always agree with them, but I do listen. And so bring that up to your family so that we can get rid of some of that homophobia that exists, And also when it comes to women's right to abortion, a lot of us come from Catholic backgrounds or evangelical or some other religion that has taught us that, birth control was a sin, that abortion was a sin. But we know that those beliefs are outdated and wrong. And so we have to have the courage to stand up and say to people, no, those beliefs are wrong, long gone.
Yeah. I mean, these ideas, right? I would consider them like basic progressive ideas, human rights ideas that you're saying. But in our times today, the ideas you're sharing is like some radical idea, right, that, has polarized our country. And so where in your trajectory did you recognize that some of the ideas that you just mentioned, whether it's protecting a woman's right to choose, whether it's protecting the LGBTQ plus community, where did you decide that, like, this is what I'm going to stand for?
Well, on the LGBT issue, I just never experienced any kind of any kind of discrimination, and I think, and maybe because you said you kind of grew up in the Bay Area, going to Pinocchio's in San Francisco. There used to be this wonderful bar in San Francisco. It was a restaurant, and you could have dinner there, and they would have drag queens that would come out and do the entertainment. And we used to go from Stockton to San Francisco when I was like 13 years old, 14 years old. We would go to San Francisco to have dinner. But we would always go to Pinocchio's, and you would see the drag queens come out. And so I think that I never then needed to experience any kind of, I guess, discrimination against LGBT people ever, And I think it would be a really good idea if in all the schools, starting in elementary school, if people had a drag day once a year, you could have all the boys dress up as girls and all the girls dress up as boys, okay? And, I think that would, kind of stop the whole idea that people are discriminated, because of their gender. I think that's really bad,
Yeah, I just find it really disturbing that we're so protective of what a man should be, what a woman should be. in a society where I think a lot of the men that kind of go crazy about this idea, I think they have a very, low sense of self in terms of who they are as men, and so they're trying to protect manhood so much, and they get lost in like these debates that we shouldn't be having in terms of boy, whatever, as you mentioned, what business is it to us who someone chooses to love?
Well, this is a lot of the stuff that comes, again from religion, and on the issue of the abortion issue, it took my feminist friends like Gloria Steinem and Ellie Smale, who's the head of the Feminist Majority Foundation, to get me through that transition. So with Gloria Steinem, I was able to go from being against abortion to choice. Okay.
Oh, wait, I didn't
Yeah.
know this story. So
Yeah.
so you were against abortion up until
Oh yeah.
how long ago?
That's why I have so many kids. Not only because I was told that birth control was a sin, okay, and abortion was a sin, okay, and so you're like that. So I never used birth control. And when I met Gloria Steinem, again during the Great Boycott, I went to New York City. I met Gloria Steinem, and we spent a lot of time together. And she finally got me to the position of choice. That women have a choice.
Wow.
And then when I was asked to be on the board of the Feminist Majority Foundation, these are all the feminist women. It was Eleanor Smale. She's the one that came up with the whole term about having gender balance, and the feminization of power. And with Ellie Smale, no, Ellie Smale was just, no, women have to have the right to abortion. Every woman has the right every woman has the right over her own body, and nobody should govern a woman's body but herself.
Wow, that's powerful. And Steinman, when was this? In the late 80s?
Oh, yeah, it was in the 70s.
In the 70s. So you changed early on your stance on abortion. Early meaning, wow. Well, I have to tell you, like my mom, she got, she was a victim of a lot of assault growing up. And so she ended up, having, kids, and I was one of those kids, and she also was never, she was never provided adequate health care. So she would always tell us when we were young, she's like, I never should have had kids. She would always say, um, you know, I never wanted to. And we were little, so we got our feelings hurt. You're a little kid, and
Yeah.
your mom's telling you shouldn't have been born. But now as an adult, a mature adult, I'm like, if I could go back in time, and if I had a magic wand, and it's like my mom was struggling, and I saw her struggling, I would wave the wand and have her right. And that could mean that I'm not here today or interviewing you, right? But I think it's so important that someone like my mom or women today have the ability to a basic human right to choose right what's right for them and their body. So yeah, just thinking about a very complicated issue, but it's powerful to hear how early on you were influenced and impacted to the point where you're willing to change. And I think in that sense, you're, a shapeshifter. You're someone that knows how to kind of evolve for the needs of the community. And even today, right, in the year 2026, you go meet young people, and they're, this new generation, Gen Z, is out there. Largest Latino population, 25% of our country is Latino right now because of Gen Z. They're the biggest group in terms of generation in our community. They're voting, they're organizing, they're in college, they're graduated college, they're starting their jobs. They're coming up with language I don't understand. Like my son the other day I forget what phrase he was using. I didn't even understand their language. But somehow you always adapt to the new generations. What's something that you've seen lately that has inspired you with the new generations in terms of their movimiento?
Well, I think the bravery that they have, I mean, is really, really inspiring. it does remind you of the movement in the 60s and the 70s, and you see all these young people that are out there, and with the dreamers, unafraid, Yeah, people kind of forget that the reason that Obama was able to finally sign an executive order for the Dreamers is because they sat in all of the offices of the Democratic Party. And one of those places was in Texas. And in Texas, as you know, they're not usually as politically advanced, you might say, or as progressive. I should say, they're not as progressive as we are in California. But man, those they kids sat in all the Democratic Party offices. So Obama he was forced to support the DACA kids. I mean, they set the example for everybody. And I know that was quite some time ago. But you see this new younger generation that is out there, they're saying, okay, we're going to do that and more. Okay, just watch us.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see that. Well, Dolores, I know, that you have just incredible impact everywhere you go, anywhere you go. And I wonder, in terms of impact, what would be sort of some words you have for this young generation?
Well, I did want to just, for the record, just say that in when we started the United Farm Workers, that we actually immigrated a lot of people to the U.S. because when they ended the Bracero program in the 40s, they allowed the ones who had been ex-Braceros to immigrate very easily to the United States. And get this, they only needed 3 documents: an offer of employment, and it could be from a labor contractor. It didn't have to be from a grower. A labor contractor could give you an offer of employment that said, I will offer fulano de tal a job, okay, a year-round job. And then you needed a letter from somebody in the community that said he would support, or they would support this person if they got sick, so they would become a public charge. And fingerprints, that was it. 3 documents. And so with our typewriters, we were able to immigrate tons of people. We would just go to a community, bring up our typewriter, and one by one they would come and we would fill out the papers for them, okay?
Wow.
And so we were able to immigrate a lot of people. And then, of course, then we did, I worked on the amnesty program in Washington. I was there for 4 months working on the amnesty program. And with that amnesty program in 1986, we got about 17 million people came to the United States. So when you hear these rumors that say that the UFW was against immigrants, it is a damn lie. And I can prove it. Yeah, we helped. And then, in fact, half of our membership wasn't documented, in the UFW. When the amnesty bill passed, and we set up offices, because I had been in Washington, I had all the documents that they need, that they were going to need. And so we set up offices in Texas and El Paso. We set up offices in New Mexico. We set up offices in Washington State also, and throughout California. And we were able to process the documents for people to get the amnesty, and all we charged was $50, okay?
Wow.
And if it was a family, it would be $75, okay? And so we helped thousands of people get their papers, not only by passing the law in the first place, because we had some people in Washington that they didn't want to include the farm workers, But it was actually, we included the farm workers, we helped get the bill passed for the residents also.
That's beautiful. And, it's the children of these immigrants, the second generation, third generation, and on, that are making this country a better place, that are leading. They're in office now, as you mentioned. There are attorneys, there are immigration attorneys, there are law enforcement, there are politicians, there are doctors, teachers, maestros, maestras. Yes. So, Dolores, it's been wonderful having you. I'm reflecting on over 80 years of impact. Before we go, I just want to sit with that for a second. 80 years of Si Se Puede. Most of us are lucky to find one cause worth giving our whole life to. Dolores Huerta has found it before she was, I would say a teenager, and she never let it go. Not through the strikes, not through the Girl Scouts, not through the arrests, not through the injuries, not through the decades when the cameras looked away. She kept showing up. She kept organizing. She kept teaching people that they have more power than they've been told. The sustainability in communities. That's the real inheritance here, not just the union she built or the law she helped pass, but the idea underneath all of it, that ordinary people standing together can move the things that seem impossible to move. Dolores, thank you for your time today, and honestly, for the last 80 years of it. And to everyone listening, however you organize, whatever your community looks like, whatever fight you're carrying, you're standing on ground she helped to build. Sí se puede. Thank you, Dolores.
Thank you.